Is to call to order, and we will do a roll call. So I will turn it over to Marcine Meliza will go ahead and do our roll call for us.
Good morning. Megan Ellis.
Present.
Reese Isbell.
I'm here.
Callie Pham.
Good morning, Callie Mae Pham, public member, present.
And Derek Matos is absent.
All right, that we have established a quorum. The next item on our agenda is an election of a committee chairperson. So that being said, we will take nominations for someone who would like to serve as the chairperson of this committee.
Can I just ask, a couple of us are very new members. How is this process usually done?
It is usually done just basically like we did our president at our last meeting. Someone either nominates or, this is a small group, so you can certainly say that you'd be happy to do it yourself, or someone can nominate one of our members, and then we take a vote. And it's the chairperson is basically the person who runs these meetings.
Okay. I'd be happy to serve.
Okay. I am happy to nominate Reese to be chairperson of this committee.
Happy to second that motion.
And I'll ask our legal counsel, do we need a vote on this?
We can go ahead and ask for public comment, and then we can have a quick roll call vote.
Okay. So with that, we will go ahead and have this open to public comment.
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment on the election. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box, which should have appeared in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take comments in the order we have requests. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. Okay, we will go for a vote at this point, and we will do that by roll call since we are virtual. So Marcine, if you could go ahead and call the roll.
Megan Ellis.
Yes.
Reese Isbell.
Yes.
Callie Pham.
Yes.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Reese. You are now our chair of our Legislation and Budget Committee. So I will turn the reins over to you, but of course I'm here to give a review on the next agenda item.
Thank you very much. And thank you to my colleagues. I step in this role with very little knowledge of how it's run before. So if I am not doing something appropriately, or you want me to do something different, please just talk to me about it. So good morning. I guess we are moving to the next item, which is discussion of various recommendations regarding proposed bills. Do I turn that over to you, Director, or?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So we first, let me just say that this is the first Legislation and Budget Committee meeting we've had in quite some time. So there's not a lot of past experience to go on. Our board has notoriously not operated on the committee assignments. But now, of course, that we have an increased number of boards, I definitely think it's a good idea because we have so many more members coming on. So this again, is our first meeting that we've had in quite some time. So we have a list of bills that we are tracking. Of course, we have to post our agenda 10 days in advance. Since this meeting, there is likely more bills that have already come out that we are currently tracking in-house. So this agenda will change regularly as more bills get amended and may impact our board. So as for today, the bills that we do have listed on the agenda, we'll just go through each of them. The committee would make a recommendation to the board to either support. Well, there's a few options that you can take on legislation. You can support it, you can oppose it, or you can just make the recommendation to watch the bill. So just for us to keep an eye on it. And then, of course, if it was a bill that we would want changes to, you could support with amendments, saying that you would support that bill if it was amended, or you could oppose unless amended. Saying that the board would oppose it unless the bill was changed to any recommended amendments that we have decided on. So at this point, we'll go ahead and start going through each of these pieces of legislation. We'll go through one at a time, and the committee can discuss, and if they so choose, to make a motion for a recommendation to the board for a position, and then we would go to public comment prior to the vote of the committee. So we will start with AB 646. This is a bill that is covers all DCA boards, and it is regarding expunged convictions. It's a requirement of certain information that has to be posted online when a license is revoked. And of course, you have our analysis as well as the actual bill in your packet. There is not a significant impact to our board for this bill because our board rarely revokes licenses. We do operate greatly on a citation and fine method of discipline. That is definitely our strongest arm of discipline that we use, as opposed to revoking, especially when it comes to prior convictions. Our board is known for going into prisons to test and license people who are incarcerated and who are close to being paroled so that they can gain employment in the industry fairly quickly. So this bill does not impact us greatly. But of course, it probably would on many other boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs. So that's kind of an overview of this bill. And so I would turn it back to the committee for any discussion or questions.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions from the committee? As chair, am I able to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, great. I move that we would take a supported position on this bill.
I would second that motion. Would we now go to public comment? No.
Yes.
Yes.
Now we'll open it to public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the first bill. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order that we have requests for comment. Let's take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. Thank you. And I apologize for my background. The sun is hitting me in just the right moment, and I can't get it gone. Yes, should we take a vote?
Absolutely.
So we can go to Marcine to call the roll for that vote.
Okay.
Okay. Megan Ellis,
Public member Ellis, yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Calamy Pham.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 3 yeses.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you. Director?
Okay, moving on to our next bill, which is AB 1604. This bill is also a bill that covers all of the department's boards. And what this bill does is requires on or after January 1st, 2023, it requires at least one volunteer board member or commissioner from an underrepresented community. We do not feel that this is a significant bill for our board, as we, for one, we do not capture that data in any of our records. And also, we feel we have a very diverse board to start with. So while we don't see that it being an impact to our board, it could impact other boards. As the executive officer, I would recommend a watch position on this bill, but that is, of course, up to the committee.
Any comments or questions from committee members?
Yes, this is Kelly May Pham. Thank you, Christy. I was a little confused reading this because it started off as, well, or the idea of having one diverse member of a volunteer board, but then it went into a lot more about like broader policies that needed to be changed and overhauls, and that was a little confusing to me, just from what I'm familiar with the process of I guess appointments to commissions or boards. I thought that was something that the governor's office does. Well, obviously the governor's office has a particular, staff that's dedicated to that. And so I didn't understand the information about the budget effect and what exactly this affects. So yes, I wouldn't be in support of watch because I think the bill itself is not clear about what it is that it's trying to do or what kind of changes the specific change it's trying to call for.
Agree.
Any other thoughts? Is that a motion to watch? Do we need a motion to watch?
That would be great if we had a motion to watch.
Okay, well then I will move to have our position be or our recommendation to the board be to watch this bill.
Seconded.
And now we should go to public comment.
We are now open for public comment on AB 1604. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box, which should have appeared in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comment. Let's take just a second now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. Marcine, can we call the roll?
Yes. Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
and Calamy Pham.
Yes.
Thank you. 3 yeses.
Thank you. Motion passes. Christy.
All right, our next bill is AB 1661. This bill has to do with a human trafficking notice. This bill would require a notice to be posted by barbering and cosmetology businesses. So this does impact us directly. It does share the information. Many of you may have seen some information in other types of businesses. I know they are in airports on human trafficking. And so this bill does require that our licensees post a human trafficking information in their businesses. With that, I would open it to the committee for discussion.
I do have a question on that. In the analysis, it says that we already share these notices by mail. Is it part of our inspection requirements? That it's posted or not?
Not currently.
Would that change this?
Is Allison on? Do you know if there's an enforcement piece of this bill?
Not currently.
Okay, so it's not, one of the, maybe a year or two ago, we were required, our establishments were required to post some information on labor, which is not within our authority to enforce, but we were required to enforce the posting of that information. So this bill's not written in that way. So there's not an inspection piece for it. It's just a requirement that it be posted. Is that correct, Allison?
That's my understanding. It could still be amended, like you mentioned.
Right.
And so, according to the legislation, what is the penalty for not posting?
I don't believe there's a penalty for us. It's an amendment to the civil code. We don't normally enforce the civil code, so I'm not sure if that means someone else would allow another entity to enforce that, but it would not be us enforcing it. It would just be that our establishments are required to do it.
Okay. Any other questions from other members? Or thoughts or motions?
I don't see an issue with supporting it. Obviously, it's important information that we want to be as widely as available as possible. I guess if we're not enforcing it, though, it's really gonna. I mean, the function will be a suggestion for our licensees in reality. But if it encourages people to again comply, even if it's not part of our inspections, I think that could be an overall net good. And it doesn't sound like it would be much of a change to, I think, Chrissy, you mentioned we already send out that information. And so in terms of, printing costs, we're already doing it. I guess we're just kind of, how would we communicate that it would have to, that members would need to post? Would it be?
Well, we would likely provide that information upon someone becoming licensed initially or at renewal time for an establishment license. That's how we've promoted some of the other information that is out there that we want our establishments to know about.
Okay.
So is that a motion or more discussion?
If there's no more discussion, then yes, I would move to make a recommendation to approve or support this bill.
Seconded.
Is that support based upon any potential amendments, or is that just support generally at this point?
Just support generally. I don't think that I would want to add. If it's not in there, I think the only thing that we would be talking about would be asking them to put in language to have us make it part of our inspections, which I feel like is that's a whole different consideration. Is that what you wanted to think about? Reese?
No, I just wanted to clarify because we were discussing potential ramifications of this. So no, a motion to support is fine if that's what you would like to do.
Great.
All right. Public comment, I guess.
We are now taking public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for public comment. Our first request comes from Jamie. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Morning. This is. Can you
go ahead, please? Yes, go ahead, please.
Good morning. This is Jamie Schrabeck from Precision Nails. I would urge the board to take a watch position on this bill. My concern is that we're focusing more on posting requirements than actually doing something about human trafficking. And note that the fine is $500. And when we compare that to the fines that we level against our own licensees for things like unlicensed activity, I think there's just no comparison of posting something about human trafficking with unlicensed activity. Also, I will note that the way that they've worded the part of this bill, which is line 14, is not very clear. So if it's a matter of applying to all licensed establishments, that would be one thing, or is it all licensed individuals? It's not clear at all. And if human trafficking is happening everywhere, then why aren't other businesses required to post this? Tattoo parlors, restaurants, bars. I can think of a lot of other places where this would be necessary. So I, in fact, am opposed, but would urge you to take a watch position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
At this time, we have no request for or no additional request for comment. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, we can close comments. Any further discussion? Call for a vote on the motion to support.
Okay, Member Ellis,
Yes.
Member Isbell,
Yes.
and Member Pham.
Yes.
Thank you. That will be all 3 yeses.
Okay, thank you. Christy?
All right. Our next bill is AB 1733. This bill is regarding how we conduct our meetings. This is the bill that would change the Open Meeting Act to allow us to hold teleconferences. We've been able to hold our virtual meetings throughout the past several years of the pandemic based on governor's executive orders. So this is to put it into statute that we could do a teleconference meeting if we so choose. And one of the big issues prior to the pandemic, when we would hold a teleconference meeting, we would have to post on the agenda every single address where a public meeting, a public person was calling it, board member, is calling in from. So oftentimes that would be someone's home address. And of course, we don't want to open your home addresses to the public. Or you would have to go to a location that would have to be open to the public. And the executive order allowed us not to have to post those addresses. So this bill is to actually change to the Open Meetings Act that would allow us to do that, at least allow us to have the option there's been a lot of discussions amongst all the boards on this topic. We know we want to try to get back in person, and our next meeting is scheduled to be 100% in person. But it would, this change would be a good amendment that would still allow us to do that teleconference type meeting, especially considering the type of public participation that we did receive during the pandemic. We obviously had lots of people that tuned into probably their first board meeting. And unfortunately, not everyone can get to some of the locations where we hold public meetings. So there's definitely, in my opinion, a definite reason to allow us to increase, our public participation by holding telecommuting web-based meetings. So that is my review of the bill, and I will open it to you for discussion.
Questions, discussion?
I believe there was a part in the analysis about the concern about there still being a requirement that provide at least one public location, even if we have a teleconference meeting. Is that right, Christy?
Yes. So we're looking to try to do a hybrid type of a setting, so that we could have a public setting. For instance, one of our rooms here at the Department of Consumer Affairs headquarters is set up to do a hybrid, so that we could have one location where staff would be, where if board members wanted to come into Sacramento, they could be, and it could be open to the public as well, but it would still allow the ability for the virtual interaction to take place.
I have a general question on that. Has there been any review by the governor's office or oversight of all the commissions and so forth on access questions like this during virtual conferences that we've held during COVID?
Not that I am aware of. I can tell you that all boards have provided a lot of information to the Department of Consumer Affairs on this bill, showing how much attendance we've had. So it's still pretty early in the legislative process for this bill, but but we have been questioned a lot on what type of input we've had from the public and how much it's also been a cost savings to all of our boards because we haven't had to travel or get a contract for a hotel room. So there has been a lot of that done yet. The bill's still moving through the process. It's still very early, so a lot of that hasn't been, I believe, fully put together and put out yet.
Thank you. I guess my largest concern is less about us specifically and more about the process that the state decides to do. And that just involves, we're living in an age where everyone has internet, but some people still don't. And so I just want to clarify the specific in-person meeting requests, if that's something that other boards are finding that would be still helpful, or if it's no longer really necessary. And I know with COVID, we've been under specific mandates for virtuality, but I'm curious if there's been further analysis on the impact of people who aren't able to get on the web for their various commissions or boards or licenses.
Yeah, I haven't. Oh, go ahead, Sabina.
Sorry, I wanted to just jump in here and remind you also that it's not just the web. Anybody can call into these programs like we're doing now with WebEx. It's purely not just internet access. So it would be both. So we would be able to capture those who wouldn't have internet access. I know you couldn't necessarily see the screen, but you could still, and it would still allow for public participation. And that's, I think, the ultimate goal here. And what we've seen, I know Christy said, we've seen a great increase in public participation. And I can say for the rest of my other 5 clients, we've seen the same. It's been great.
Great, that's great to hear. And yes, that's good. I'm just thinking through the further details of it. Any other comments from other board members?
Yeah, because coming back to the physical location, I saw in the analysis today that that we put in that someone believes that a physical location might not be necessary, but then Chrissy, you had mentioned that we are actually making arrangements so that some kind of hybrid is possible. So it sounds like we are capable or considering providing the one physical location. So I just wanted to kind of talk more about that. On the one hand, I do, it's great to have a place for someone to come in person, but I think if I think more broadly, I think it's true that requiring only one physical location, it's very likely, for example, I do not live close to Sacramento. So if there was a physical location, it wouldn't be that convenient for me. And I think for a lot of people that would be the case. And so I guess it's like a question of is it as beneficial as we would like it to be to have just the one location, or does it make sense, to recommend an amendment that in general, we don't need that one physical location because there's the internet and the phone. So that, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that, because I feel like that can go either way. I can see the benefit of having one location, but realistically, how many people are we capturing or able to serve with just one physical location?
Member Alice, did you have any comments?
I would, so as a person who does live close to Sacramento, I would agree. What would be the benefit of holding a room available in Sacramento if, say, the majority of our attending population is, say, in Southern California or the Bay Area, where they might not be able to easily commute to Sacramento? Do we know, I know it's early days, but do we have a projected cost as to an estimate as to having one public location?
So I don't think that the bill necessarily requires that location to be Sacramento. So I think that's up for discussion as well. We would have to ensure that if, say our one physical location could be in downtown Los Angeles, and we would just have to make sure that we have the technology for that, as to make that happen for the telecommuting.
And Christy, do we have any estimate as to how many members of the public would attend if this option was available?
No, what we do have is just based on what we've had in the past, pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, our board meetings that we've had before COVID would range greatly. Sometimes we would have a meeting that would be close to a school, and a school would bring in their students, so the room would be full. And then sometimes we would have 3 people. So we have a wide range, probably not 3 people. We usually average around 10 at a physical meeting. So it did range quite a bit before COVID hit.
Can I interject? It's Sabina.
Yes, Sabina.
Okay, so a couple of things. We've been hearing a lot about this bill in the department, so I can kind of offer a little bit about what we've heard. So if this bill were to be kind of like how it's written now, your meeting that's happening right now can be exactly like this. However, there would also be one location where people could come to the physical location, and we would be basically broadcasting, if you will, on the web from that location. So this would still look the same. You don't have to go to necessarily the physical location, but you could if you wanted. Now, the way it is now, we have one hearing room that's kind of set up to do this. So we don't have the physical locations available to be able to webcast directly from our hearing rooms in like down south or in the Bay Area. So that's part of the challenge, is that we only have right now one place set up to be able to do that broadcasting from that physical location. So, and I know they're exploring different, locations and trying to figure out, well, if we can maybe get one spot down south, and then we'll have maybe get all the rest of our hearing rooms updated here to where we can do it, then we would have, we would probably end up with like 3 locations maybe where we could hold these WebEx meetings, hybrid type of meetings. So it doesn't change a lot from what you're looking at right now, except for there would be then the physical location, maybe where staff would be, or if you're a local board member, you can come, that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't change a lot how we're doing now, but would end up with one more location for public and staff.
Did you, thank you, Sabina. Were you talking on behalf of DCA in general? Like, is DCA considering having these rooms available for any board that needs them? So it's not like it would be our board specifically having to figure out these locations. Is that right?
Right. So we would have, our hearing rooms usually used to meet in like HQ2, right? And like that one, I believe, if I'm correct, is set up to be able to do this already. We would have to update the other hearing rooms like that, but it would have to be available for all boards in the department because we would all be subject to the same law, right? When there's, of course, talk of, do we rent a room? Do we contract out? So there is a room available or a building available just for this purpose also that's already wired and set up for this purpose.
Does DCA have a position on this bill itself?
Christy, I don't
believe they have a position. I don't know that DCA actually takes positions on bills until the very end of the process.
I think I can tell you from my other boards, it's welcomed. Like Christy said, we're seeing a ton more participation. It's easier for people to participate. You don't have to travel. You don't have to wait for the board meeting to come near you. You can participate however you want. You can watch, you can listen, there's a lot more accessibility. And I think my other boards really like the ideas to be able to have that flexibility, because maybe the board members do want to come to the public location, the physical location once a year, and that way they get that, that in-person experience. And maybe, if they can't travel, maybe they're feeling under the weather, maybe, they have any other issues, they can't travel, and it's creates that flexibility.
Can I ask one more legal question? How would this impact quorums?
Our quorum would remain the same.
But I mean,
we still have to have a quorum for a meeting. Yeah.
In person or virtually or hybrid, any of that would work?
Yeah, hybrid and whatever, we would still need a full quorum present.
Okay. I'm in support of this bill. I think we're just discussing specific arrangements right at the moment regarding an in-person situation. But I don't think that that's necessarily that detail we need to get into right now at this early stage of the bill. I would make a motion that we support the bill.
I would second that. I'm in favor of the teleconference option. I think it was just a question of whether it seemed the requirement of a physical location, if that was more onerous than like the benefit of the people who would be able to actually make use of that physical location. But hearing from Sabina and Christy that it sounds like that is something that we are prepared to do and are already working on, then I think it was just a question of support with an amendment or just straight out support. But it sounds like we're prepared to support it as is. So I would second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we take public comment now?
We are now open for public comment on AB 1733. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are dialing, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order that we have requests for public comment. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. And our first comment comes from Jamie. Bear with us just one moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails again. As one of 3 people who've been attending meetings for about 15 years, I do support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
At the moment, we do not have any additional requests for public comment. Do you wish to close public comments at this time?
Yes, please. Any further discussion, or should we move to a vote? Marcine?
Okay. Member Ellis,
Yes.
Member Isbell,
Yes.
and Member Pham.
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 yeses.
Thank you very much. Christy, the last bill.
Sorry about that. I had muted myself. So moving on to our next bill, which is AB 2196. This bill is a change in the educational hours from the current 1,000 hours for barbering and cosmetology to 1,200 hours for cosmetology.
And we just changed that in last year's omnibus bill.
Correct, as of January 1.
Okay. Comments, thoughts from members?
Chrissy, could you, do you have any information about how this came about, or kind of what was the thinking behind this, given that we just changed it to 1,000? I guess I'm wondering, what is that extra 200 hours trying to capture that that we're not already trying to do with the new 1,000 hours?
Unfortunately, I do not have that information. I have the information that was prepared in the analysis, but I have not, unfortunately, had time to talk to the author's office or if there's a sponsor of this bill.
Was the sponsor of this bill involved in last year's omnibus?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Have
I guess
we heard anything from his office regarding the reasons behind this?
I'm sorry?
Or his or her office regarding the decision to sponsor this bill at this time?
No.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from group?
I guess I just wanted to talk this out about what we should do. Obviously, again, I'd like to know, or at least the thinking behind it, just so, because right now we know nothing, and obviously the new change just happened, and so we don't even know how well, or we don't have information yet on how that's going to play out, and so I don't know if it's more appropriate for us to watch or to oppose.
Member Ellis?
I think at this time it would be appropriate to take a watch stance, as it's still in the early days of legislation, amendments, and hearings. Knowing more on the background as to why they would like to increase by 200 hours would be an interesting. It would be an interesting discussion, in my opinion.
Do I have a motion to watch?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
All right, thank you. Public comment.
We are now taking public comment on instructional hours. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for public comment. Our first comment is coming from Allison. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. Allison, we see that you have unmuted your microphone.
Great,
Please
thank
do.
you. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Allison Ramey, calling with comments on behalf of Bellis Academy. We were opposed to the provisions of SB 803, the hours that were reduced and the size of the reduction. And so we have had conversations with the governor's office and with the author of this bill now and committee about our continued concern about the size of the reduction in the cosmetology hours. And so this is a vehicle we are hoping to use to continue the dialogue around what number of hours is appropriate. We are already hearing some concerns in other states where the reduction has happened about what is missing from the curriculum. And again, we originally, when opposed to SB 803, had hoped to have 1,500 hours. But again, we're looking at a compromise and something that will allow the minimum number of hours to allow us to feel confident in preparing students for a long and successful career in the profession.
Thank you, Allison. Any other further comments from the public?
Our next comment is coming from Ryan. Bear with us just a moment, Ryan, and we are going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, hi. This is Ryan Claybaugh. I'm with the Paul Mitchell Schools, and I appreciate the opportunity you're giving me to comment. Again, I know Allison. I appreciate what she said as well, and we're in favor of this bill moving forward as well to increase the hours. When that was a large reduction from going from 1,600 to 1,000, and what we're feeling from our students is that they're not given enough time to practice their skills. They're getting the education and the they're getting the education piece, but they're not getting the practice piece. There's just not enough time because the education takes all the hours. And as you know, in cosmetology, you need to learn how to stand a certain way. You need to learn how to position a certain way. And if you don't have the opportunity to practice those things, it could affect you physically. Being with Paul Mitchell, we do have the opportunity to see how this has affected the Texas schools. As you know, they reduced their hours as well. And we've had conversations with those schools, and that's the feedback they're giving us is their students are not being prepared enough to enter salons just because they don't have enough experience with clients. And so for those reasons, we hope you'll agree to support this bill, as you learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Next comment.
Next comment is coming from Fred. Bear with us just a moment, please. And Fred, we are sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
On behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California, I appreciate and will speak in support of your motion to watch the bill currently, to see how the discussions go in the first policy committee and in the first house. We want to remind policymakers, most of whom really don't understand the distinction between barbering and cosmetology, that cosmetology is really the master license. It incorporates not just hair, but skin and nail services. And as such, it's really inappropriate to keep the same number of hours between barbering and cosmetology. Now, SB 803 does say a minimum of 1,000 hours. And you may think that that's the answer to this bill. But let me assure you that there will be a rush to the bottom. The market incentive to get to the bare minimum, it will be too great for a majority of schools competing for students. And students just want to get licensed. So there's pressure on the part of the students to get in and out as quickly as possible. And so it will be a rush to the bottom. And given the look, to use a restaurant analogy, we're not teaching kids to be hamburger flippers at McDonald's. We're teaching young people to become master chefs. That's what the master license of cosmetology is. And that's, by the way, why the national average remains at 1,500 hours. And so as we discuss reciprocity, and we have a lot of Californians moving out of California, that may become an issue. If they're moving from our state and only have 1,000 hours into a state that may have 1,600 or 1,700 hours. So I'm grateful that the committee is not recommending an opposed position today, that you're open-minded to this, and I support your motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Next comment.
All right, our next comment is coming from Rosemary. Bear with us just a moment. And while we haven't specified before, we are allowing 3 minutes at a turn to speak. And if you reach that 3 minutes, you will have an opportunity to make a second request after everyone has had their first attempt to be heard.
Thank
All
you,
right,
David.
Rosemary, we have sent you a request to unmute your microphone. Rosemary, we see that you have unmuted your microphone. Will you do a mic check with us, please? Can we please have technical issue slide 31? All right, Rosemary, we're going to give you and Rosemary has gone away. So we're going to move on to the next comment, and if she returns, we will take her comment. Next is Kenda. Bear with us just a moment, please. All right, Kenda, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hear me?
Yes. Go
Hi,
ahead, please.
my name is Kenda Woodward, and I'm from the Palm Mitchell Schools as well. And the reduction in the hours from SB 803 has really put a hindrance on our students. So I encourage the board to look further into this. The 1,200 hours would give us a few more 100 hours to have them master cosmetology. I'm a cosmetologist, and the 1,000 hours really, really tough to get what we all need to do to get them up and running into the industry. So I do urge the board to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenda. Next comment.
Okay, and next is Jamie. Hold on just a moment, please. Jamie, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. If it weren't for the passage of SB 803, we wouldn't even be having this discussion because the board wouldn't exist at all. The 1,000 hours, as Fred Jones stated, is a minimum. And we are not training masters of any kind. We're educating and testing for minimal competence. And the rush of schools to apply for the lower course hours of 1,000 hours, if they've not been approved, they also haven't even gone into effect yet. So we really don't know how this is going to impact schools other than perhaps their bottom line. They can't charge as much, or maybe they still will, for the same education given in a shorter amount of time. And in terms of market incentive, there's a lot of incentive to keep students in school if they're there to collect money from clients and perform those services without being compensated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next comment.
Next, we have Rosemary. Bear with us just a moment, Rosemary. We've sent you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Rosemary, we see that you have unmuted your microphone, but we do not have audio yet. Thank you for the text slide. And in a few seconds, would you also show us text slide 32? All right, Rosemary, stay with us. Continue to work on the issue, and we're going to give Peggy an opportunity to speak and circle back to you. Peggy, we see that you've unmuted your microphone.
Palmetto School as well, and I'm managing two schools. One is in New York and one is in California. For New York, we have 1,000 hours, and with my experience, we always get into the mode of rushing. So for us, for me, managing the California school for the past 20 years, we're definitely feel like it's more proper as far as giving our future professionals the education. 1,200 hours, I think it's going to be a good compromise, and I appreciate that the board is looking into supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Next comment.
All right, Rosemary, let's try this one more time. You are also welcome to dial in if you're having issues. There are instructions on the agenda. All right, Rosemary, I see that you've muted your microphone. I'm going to send you another request to unmute. All right, you appear to be unmuted. Let's take just a moment. If Rosemary is unable to resolve the issue, how would you like to proceed, Mr. Chair?
Christy, any comments or thoughts, or Sabina?
Is it possible for her to type her comment in the Q&A box, and we could read it aloud?
Absolutely. Rosemary, if you have that ability, please take this opportunity to type in the Q&A box, and perhaps just type yes into the Q&A box so we can see that you're going to spend that time, and we will wait for you. All right. We do not have anything in the Q&A box letting us know that Rosemary intends to type a comment. I'm going to suggest that we leave the Q&A box open through the next agenda item and circle back to Rosemary if that is what the committee wishes.
Is that okay, Sabina, with legal?
Absolutely. You can go ahead and finish this discussion and your vote, and then we can receive her comment later. She's also welcome to send it to the board directly, and I'm not sure if there's a specific email address that Christy could provide, And that goes for everybody here also. If you have thoughts later or additional, something comes up later, I'm not sure if there's an address that you can provide, Christy.
Sure. Those comments can come into our main email box, which is barbercosmo, BARBERCOSMO @dca.ca.gov.
Thank you, Sabina and Christy, and thank you, Rosemary, for your participation. Are there any other comments, David?
There are no additional comments at this time. As we said, we're going to keep the Q&A box open for Rosemary and allow her to continue to try and work through whatever technical issue she's dealing with. I would also like to note that the email address that was just mentioned is listed at the bottom of the slides as well.
Great. Thank you, David. We'll move back to the board discussion. Any further discussion from our board? Hearing none, do we have, this is a motion to watch. Can we call the roll?
Yes. Your vote for watch status, Member Ellis.
Yes.
Member Isbell
Yes.
and Member Pham.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's 3 yeses.
Thank you very much. Christy, is there anything further on this item or do we move to the next?
We can go ahead and move to the next.
Great.
And that next item is a review and discussion of our current budget. I will tell the members that this budget looks exactly the same as it did in our recent board meeting budget. And that is because the budget is still being worked on. So we don't have any current projections at this time. The budget is an interesting monster, for lack of a better word, because it does rely on so many other entities throughout the state of California. For us to get our current projections provided to us on a regular basis, our systems have to be updated. And for our systems to be updated, every board has to agree, or not agree, but has to have completed their process, and Fiscal, which is our database, has to be current. So as of this committee meeting, we did not have anything change from our last budget projection that was provided in the board meeting. We don't have any issues with our budget. We do not have anything that is of note. We obviously have a healthy budget, so we are usually one of the last that gets looked at by the budget office. We do rely heavily, just for your information, on our consumer affairs budget analyst. Every board has an assigned analyst within our budget office, and that analyst works with us on any monthly projections. They work with us through the Department of Finance on setting our annual budget, through the budgeting process, as well as any legislative fiscal impacts. That anytime a bill is proposed, as it's moving through the process, there's a fiscal review done on all the bills. So our DCA budget analyst is our main source for that. And then we have a budget analyst within our own office that works directly with them as well on monitoring our spending and making sure that we're in line. Again, we have a healthy budget, so we are not as a high of priority within the budget office as maybe some other boards who struggle more with their funding. But in your packets is our projections for what we saw at our last board meeting. So it was as of November 30th of 2021. Our current budget projections should be out soon, but unfortunately they weren't out in time for this meeting. And then the second page in your packet is the fund condition. So that's what's actually printed in the governor's budget, and it's where we see our actual fund that gets published. One of the things we'd like to work on in the future is when you look at our projections, you see a lot of red to the right. And if any of you are into accounting, you never want to see that red. But unfortunately, we always see the red. And it's because of our alignment with our budget. So it is something that we are working on. We've actually been working on for quite some time to try to get that alignment better adjusted, because our bottom line is obviously not red and not close to being red. And what we want to do is get a better line items for each of these so we can see that it's a true measure of our allocating for what we spend on a regular basis. Most of our expenditures are pretty standard on a regular basis. We spend pretty much the same amount on printing every year. We spend the same on postage and communication, very close on an annual basis. So there's not a lot of fluctuation. So we should hopefully be able to get that alignment set better so that we're not seeing all that red over to the right. Other than that, I am open to any questions or comments that any of the members might have.
Members?
Yes, this is Callie May. Thank you, Christy. I just wanted to just hear more about what do we expect the facilities expenses to be, or any differences given that we're no longer doing the practical exam, and is it a lot of money, and or what are we planning to do with that money?
It is. So this year is going to be very interesting for our budget because we've had so many changes because of SB 803. So we're going to definitely see our facilities change, that cost change, as well as our exam expenditures without the practical exam. We were averaging around $1.5 million a year just for the practical exam portion. So that is still being worked out in the budget office. It is going to you're going to see some significant changes. And one of the things that we have to do as a result of that is do a fee study. Not only do we have to do that because, well, it's the right thing to do at this point with the changes of our processing, is we did recently have an internal audit happen within our office that really wanted us to look at our fee structure. So that's going to be talked about soon in our strategic planning that all of our board will be involved with. It will also be an open public meeting as well, that we're going to need to do a fee study because we need to look at our fees that we are currently charging to determine if we should honestly reduce those fees because there's no more practical exam and there's no more facilities. And then it's also looking at things like our workload in general. For instance, we didn't receive any funding for our personal service permit that is about to be implemented here in the next couple of months. The personal service permit is going to be a huge workload increase, not to mention that we'll also be receiving fingerprint background checks for that. So that's a huge workload increase. So we have to look at that as well to determine if we need, and likely will need, more staff to bring in to maintain those processing times. So that's all something that we're juggling right now. The other issue that we are also going to be looking at internally is we currently use the 800 number for the entire department. The department has a call center and they have historically answered our calls. Unfortunately, over the last few years, that call center hasn't been able to assist those callers, and because they only have limited access to our database. And so one of the things we've been discussing internally is, do we need additional staffing within our office to have our own staff answer those phone calls? As a result of the phone calls going into the call center, what tends to happen is they call and are told to email our office. So we average several hundred emails a day, and it's taking our staff that are allocated to process workload time out of their days to actually be responding to emails. So there's a lot of juggling that's going to be happening with the budget over the next probably over the next year. But that is definitely stuff we are looking at right now. If we wanted to gain more positions, we have to go through the budget change proposal process. So that is coming up at the beginning of this year. And so we are working on that now to try to determine what type of staffing levels we would need, and what is our true staffing level. So we have some wiggle room there because we do have the funding that we might be able to allocate additional staff to process our workload without having to ask for more money from our budget or from our fund condition because it already exists because of the things that have happened with SB 803. So I think this is going to be ever changing over the next several months. There's a lot to really look at for our budget, and you're going to be seeing these things fluctuate quite a bit when we start to settle down and see how that plays out. Because those changes happened January 1, so they happened halfway through the fiscal year. So now we're on to our second half, and closing out the fiscal year is when we're really going to start to see our changes and how we move forward and what we need to do to maintain our staffing levels. That was a huge explanation. Sorry if
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christy.
Any other comments or questions from board members? And do we currently, is it required for us to make a recommendation to the board at this time?
I don't think you need a motion for this item. We will continue to bring it back to this committee. We will also continue to bring the budget as normal through the executive officer's report in our regular budget meeting, but I don't think there's necessarily a need for a motion from this committee on the budget, but I would recommend you open up to public comment.
Any other comments from board members before we do that? All right, can we have public comment?
We are now taking public comment on agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comment in the order they are received. And as a reminder, we are allotting 3 minutes per comment period. If you reach that 3 minutes and we tell you that your time is up, you will be offered the opportunity to make a second comment after everyone has had their first. Let's take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. So with that, we don't have a motion or movement, so we'll move to the next committee item. That's public comment on issues not on the current agenda. Can we open public comment for that?
We have opened up for agenda item 5. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order that we have requests for public comments. If you have a suggestion for a future agenda item or an issue not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to comment. We have a request from Jamie. Bear with us just one moment. And I think I spoke out of turn. This is for future agenda items will be next. Jamie, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
I'll hold my comment until the next agenda item.
Fair enough. And with that, we don't have any other requests for agenda item 5.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item 6. Agenda items for the next meeting. Board members? Christy, or do we have anything for next meeting, and do we have a date?
We do not have a date. That is one item that I was going to bring up to ask this committee now that you've been established is how often you would like to meet. Legislation is obviously fast and furious right now. So I would welcome any input on how often you would like to meet. I would recommend, as much as I hate to say it, maybe monthly. But it is legislation obviously is coming and going every day right now. So the other item I would ask this committee is, in the past, our board has really only taken positions on bills that directly impact them. So other boards and their committees will look at bills that impact a much broader aspect, say regulations. There's often lots of bills that might change how the process goes for how we promulgate regulations. There are boards that look at every bill that has an overreaching impact to the Department of Consumer Affairs. And that's historically not been something that this board has done. So now that we do have this committee, I would open it up to you as your pleasure if that is something you would like us to take on. And bring you the bills that are what we consider department-wide. We had a couple in our review today, but there are already a lot more. And then, of course, anything that we would always bring to you anything that would impact the industry directly.
Okay, so I'm hearing two things. One, a potential next date and regularity.
Yes.
And secondly, purview of the committee. I would say we put the purview question onto the agenda for the next meeting. And to answer the question about the next meeting, I do agree with Christy that we probably should have monthly with legislation because it's fast and furious. And so that would be my recommendation as well.
My thought about this, just the regularity, I'm just wondering in terms of what we do, like what actions we actually take, right? Because we're just talking about recommendations that the board would then need to take action on. So if we're meeting monthly, but we're just talking about collecting all of this information together that it will eventually appear for a board meeting. And so in that way, it seems like it makes more sense to me to have them relatively close to our, like, scheduled at least in line with our board meetings. So at the very least quarterly, and like leading up to it, maybe a few weeks prior to, so we have that information ready to go on an agenda for a board meeting. Just because, us meeting monthly, it's not like we can take an action and act on any particular piece of legislation. It will still need to be held for the board to review. So
it's a good point, Member Pham. Member Ellis?
Apologies, I was having troubles with my mute button. So particularly during this time of year, it's ramped up in terms of the number of bills that are being reviewed, are being amended, edited, etc. I think it would be good to meet on a more regular basis, perhaps during this time of the year, when things are sort of, as you were saying, Christy, moving fast and furious, and then towards the summer months, fall, et cetera, when things are slowing down a bit. Perhaps that's when we move to a less frequent meeting base. Would that be possible?
Certainly.
I think it's up to us to make our calendar, correct?
It is. And I definitely, to start with, I would recommend we do, and we will work with the committee on an exact date, but I do recommend we do have a board meeting on April 25th. And so I would, the staff do need time ahead of the board meeting to prepare. And we certainly have some requirements. We have to have the agenda posted 10 days in advance, and then we have to work on our material to get out to all the board members. So I would recommend we have our next meeting of this committee in early April so that we look at everything ahead of time and have that firm recommendation that we have to go to work to the board at the April meeting.
I agree. I agree with everyone's sentiments. I do have a comment just on regularity. I do agreeing with Member Pham's concerns regarding the connection to board meetings in particular. I do also, though, think that regularity on our committee level does provide an opportunity for the public to speak up as well on any specific things as they're happening, or more regularly than waiting for the board to make an agenda item. So I would follow Christy's suggestion about an early April meeting, and I would suggest if we could have staff put together a regular meeting schedule, as Member Ellis mentioned, pretty regularly, monthly, the early part of this year, and then we'll see how that goes for later. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. Any other agenda items for our next meeting in early April? Hearing none, can we go to public comment?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 6, future agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order that they have requests for public comment. And Jamie has indicated she wishes to comment. Bear with us just a moment. We will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. 3 points. I encourage you to have more frequent meetings earlier in the process because no one takes up our cause. We rarely have legislation that we initiate, and with so much that was accomplished in SB 803, we're still looking for cleanup language, and I don't know where that's going to happen. And speaking of sunset review, I would hope that we would also keep an eye on what's happening with the BPPE, the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, and also the California Massage Therapy Council. Even though massage therapy is not part of our licensure, it's certainly something that happens in many of the same establishments that are licensed by the board. And last and dearest and nearest to my heart would be adding AB 1818 to your list and supporting that strongly, because this would in fact align manicurists with all the other license types in exempting them from AB 5. AB 1561 went the entire course without being brought up with the board, and that extended our sunset from AB 5 until 2025. But if we don't take action, then as of the end of 2024, licensed manicurists would no longer be able to be independent contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next comment.
This is the moderator. At the moment, there are no requests for public comment. Do you wish to close comments at this time or give another moment?
I think we can close comments at this time. Christy, how do we proceed next with any other potential agenda items?
You can add agenda items now, or as chair, you can certainly always add them at any time that you would like.
Okay. Members, any other items?
I believe we should post for the next agenda to discuss what Christy had mentioned earlier and determine whether we would like to review all DCA policies or just those pertinent to the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology.
Thank you. And do we, I'm not sure the legality of the role regarding public comments and their suggestions. Do we consider those? Do we need to move them? Do we, how does that work?
This is Sabina. No need to make any decisions right now. You can always be in communication with Christy when she starts developing the agenda. Obviously, there's no rush just yet. And like she said, there might be new bills popping up here and there before you even get ready to draft that agenda. So I know she'll be reaching out with updates and considerations for your agenda topics. And I know that staff, and as well as her and me, have taken copious notes on what everybody has commented here. And we'll see what makes sense and what is going to make to our next agenda. We also have to be able to balance that too. We can't overload you guys with, 30 billion agenda topics at 1 2-hour meeting, right? But yeah, so that's typically how we work these things.
Thank you, Sabina. Just want to be cognizant of our public comments. So thank you very much. Do we need to make any motion regarding this list that we've created, or do we just, this is part of the discussion and it goes to you all next?
That's correct. It's part of the discussion, part of the development of the next agenda, what should be on our radar, what will be on our radar, what we'll continue to bring to you. So there's no need for an motion for this, nor would there be a motion for adjournment.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other question, potential agenda item, and maybe this is already determined. I'm curious if this committee has ever made recommendations generally, like resolutions or something like that, not related specifically to a current bill.
It has not in the past, but I believe that's something, I assume you mean like if you wanted to propose new legislation. This is
or even general guidelines or things like that.
I definitely think that's something that this committee could take up.
Okay, I would add that to our next agenda items. And I can certainly talk with you more about what
Sounds good.
On that level. Yes, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Hearing none, move to the next agenda item, which is adjournment. Do we have anything further?
We do not. I would just make a housekeeping announcement that we do have our second committee of the day that will start at 11. Normally, we would not put these committees on the same day, but we had some scheduling issues for this. So our next committee, which includes a few of our members that are on here right now, will not start until 11. So I believe we can mute and turn our cameras off until that time after your formal adjournment.
Okay. Do we have a move to adjourn?
I think we don't need a motion to adjourn. As chair, you can just declare.
All right, good. Then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
As the moderator.